Well, good afternoon, folks. It's great to be with you. I'll dodge from behind this podium from time to time. You can see my high-tech presentation here. So it's a workshop, isn't it? We're supposed to be interactive in the workshop, would you think? You're all looking way, way too serious. Who feels that they've got enough hours in the day? No hands. How interesting is that? Oh, you've got plenty of time, have you, Ian? Oh, not enough. And who feels that there's too much information? You're just overloaded all the time. Yep, that's why you're here, right? As Jacob mentioned, and thank you very much for the introduction. Thank you. Are you from Denmark, did you say? Yes, that's a very long way from here, so thank you for coming to our wonderful country. I am a columnist for the New Zealand Herald Online, and I have been writing for them in the small business section for a little over a year now. On the 30th of May this year, I submitted one article entitled "Don't Make Email First Thing in the Day." And I don't know if any of you might have seen that article. No, okay. It was very interesting responses. There were about 28 responses, I think it was, off the top of my head, and 3/4 of them acted like I'd stolen their baby. And go, ooh, this is interesting. What it highlighted for me, I think, was what I assessed out of that was that more than anything, I believe that people, it highlighted that there is this tyranny of the immediate that we live in. And it also highlighted for me this sense of urgency and, if you like, addiction to the issue of how we keep in touch with information, how we're handling it. And that set me on a bit of a journey to understand a little bit more of that. And it opened up an interesting body of research, and of course I've been looking for solutions. Because in the 20 years now that I've been working and specialising in the field of time management, I absolutely come from the place of wanting to make it as practical as possible. It's probably something to do with my country upbringing. I have lived actually near Whirinaki at one period of my life, and I come from country areas, although these days I live in Auckland. People do say to me, where do you live, Robyn? And often it's wherever my laptop and my mobile phone are, sad story. Not really. I have a very interesting life travelling around, but constantly everywhere that I work, I find people saying that there is just too much information. When I'm running seminars and I ask people what their biggest issues are, typically email is right up the top there, and also interruptions is right up the top there, and there's this sense of overwhelm. So what I thought what I decided I would like to do for you folks today, given the erudite audience that we have, was to have a look at a little bit of the research behind it, which when I put that into my next fortnightly column for the Herald, in fact the shouting stopped, because people realised that there was some substance behind why I was suggesting that we don't do emails first thing in the day. And then following on from that, there were various other examples that I gave in subsequent columns. So what I'm going to share with you is a little bit of the research behind it, and then we'll also look at some practical solutions. If we do have time, I'd love to get some contributions from you as well, because I just really enjoy the interactivity of the opportunity of smaller groups such as this. So let's have a look at that research first and foremost. The first person that I spoke with about this, that really highlighted a vast body of research, was a friend, he's now become a friend, a chap called Stuart Snooks. He is a specialist in information overload, operating out of Melbourne, and he loves the data and the chunky stuff behind it. Stuart's website, you've got no, does anyone need any paper or pens, by the way, or you're all good for that? Okay, his website is www.emailtiger.com.au, and I would really encourage you to go and download his report, which is called The 8 Critical Impacts of Information and Email Overload. Some of the points that I have in this speech are from an interview that I did with him last year. So that's where you can get a quick snapshot of some really pretty substantial research. Now, some of the people that are doing research in this area include Intel. They've been researching it since 1995, and they've got some really good research data. A gentleman called Nathan Zells, he originally drove the research. He is now specialising in his own right on information overload and how to use the technology to manage it. There's an organisation, I love the people that are behind this one. It's the initials. Don't we love acronyms in this industry? I've noticed a lot of acronyms. You too? Notice lots of acronyms being used around here? Yeah. This one is the IORG, and it stands for the Information Overload Research Group. The URL is http /IORGforum.org. And it's a non-profit interest group funded, interestingly enough, by many of the people that are causing the problem. Microsoft, Google, Intel, and various other worthy bodies providing all this wonderful technology. And please don't get me wrong, I'm not for 1 second suggesting we be Luddites and go back to not having the technology. I love the things that email can do. I love the fact that I can look things up on the web instantly. I'm an ex-librarian. In my very first career, I was a librarian at Royal Public Library and living at Murupara at the time, some of the time, Peter, which is why I was sort of lucky. And so certainly I understand about information, that it's great, and I love using libraries, but it's really great having that wonderful library at our fingertips called the internet. It's so valuable. The stated objective for the IORG is they're dedicated to addressing the problem of information overload, an ongoing crisis that diminishes productivity and quality of life amongst knowledge workers worldwide. Interesting agenda. Another organisation, and I've had contact with the CEO for this group, is New York-based called BASEX, B-A-S-E-X. They're a research company that specialise in information overload, and just a couple of their stats, just to tickle your thinking on this one. In 2010, they estimated that information overload cost the US economy $997 billion per annum. And another stat, and they've got lots of them, if everyone sent 10% less emails, it would have $180 billion annual impact worldwide on the workplace per annum. We're talking serious money here, folks. Now, their CEO and chief analyst is a gentleman called Jonathan Spera, and I've been fortunate that he must have a Google alert on his name because he jumped in on the dialogue that was going on with the Herald, with those series of articles that I told you about. And I managed to get his book on my Kindle whilst I was travelling in France. It's called Overload, How Too Much Information is Hazardous to Your Organisation. And Jonathan gave me some updates on some of the information that I've learned from my friend Stuart Snooks. Patrick, where's Patrick? Is this speaker still going as well, honey? You've turned it down, that's great. Is the feedback okay for you folks? Yeah. Good, great. One of the interesting things that Jonathan shared with me, I used to talk about how long it took to deal with an interruption. Let's get some thoughts from you. How long do you think it takes us to recover when we've taken an interruption on anything, to get back on track? About 20 minutes, that's what I had originally been told, about 15 to 20 minutes. Well, they've updated the research, and what Jonathan expressed to me was that whatever the length of the interruption, it will be about 10 to 20 times the length of that interruption will be the recovery time. So in other words, a 30-second interruption potentially could take us between 5 to 10 minutes to get back on track. And here's the rider on that one, if we ever do. Because how often, well, let me ask you, how often do you find you take an interruption or a distraction of some sort and then hello, you're not back on it again? Or sometimes hours later you've got all these multiple screens open, or who has lots of things going on their desk on a regular basis? This is why you're here, isn't it? Bless your hearts. Exactly. And it's this constant fragmentation that's going on that's causing us problems. Would you agree? Yes. Absolutely. And so this was an interesting point from Jonathan about the length of time. It can be measured against the length of the interruption. So when those people come into your desk and they say, have you got a minute, or come to your office or your table or wherever you're seated, have you got a minute? What do you typically think inside? Exactly. This is groan, isn't it? Well, because it's never a minute. What is that? How a minute will stretch. There's another gentleman called Paul Chin, and this is the last of the references that I'll give you. Paul Chin, who's got a regular online journal, he's got one called Dealing with Information Overload, And his little phrase I liked was, rampant multitasking and the deluge of available information has produced a counterproductive culture and created a paradox. The more we try to do, the less we get done. Anyone notice that? And the more inundated we are with information, the less time we spend absorbing it. So it's all sounding very gloomy right now. Let me very quickly give you just a few. I'm not going to give you the whole list that I've got here of impacts of some of these things, but there are a few that I really want to highlight because I want to make sure that in the short space of time I have with you, that I give you some solutions as well. I don't want you to go away from here all depressed. So some of the impact, we can break it into different areas on our brain, on our work effectiveness, on our health, and even on our communication, but I won't pick up the communication one. On our brain, did you know that there is now something called a pseudo-ADD? Who's heard of that? Yeah, right. And it's pseudo, what do you think it sounds like? Just call out. It's about attention deficit, yes, but it's a pseudo one. It's not, because the ADD is typically recognised, and I'm not a psychologist, but it's typically recognised as something that, am I right in that we tend to be born with it? Is that correct? My understanding of it. But this is something that comes upon us because of the environment in which we work. And it's a pseudo-ADD was a term coined by two Harvard professors to explain the addiction to the bombardment of information. Now, I must confess that a couple of times I've checked emails and texts since I've been here yesterday. Had the privilege of attending Peter Hines' awesome seminar on working lean, just a couple of times. But how many of you have sort of within every 5 to 10 minutes have just had a wee peek on your smartphones? Do you think sometimes it just becomes a compulsion? I mean, my oldest son, he's a colonel in the New Zealand Army. I think Cheryl Box is going to talk about him briefly tomorrow in her session. And I watch him, the job that he used to be in prior, he needed to be always on. But what happens if we're always on? You never shut down, you just get into this incredible stress situation, and it's not a healthy place to be. Also, it's having an impact on the way in which our brain works. What's happened is that we get a shortened attention span. It has a sustained negative neurological impact, and it's not an illness, it's only a response to the environment in which we have put ourselves or in which we find ourselves. An example, I was attending a business networking function recently that a group that I belong to. There was a young woman there who now is working for a research body here in Auckland, doing some quite significant research. Prior, she had worked for a very fast-paced young company, IT-focused, building games and stuff like that, so in that digital gaming space. She said it was an awesome company to work with. They were really fun, lots of action going on, very open plan environment, buzzy. She said when she chose, I can't remember why she chose, but she moved to this other company where things were much slower paced, where they had time to reflect, they had time to study the data, to gather the data, study it, analyse it, create excellent material for distribution to government organisations and so on and so forth. And she said, even though she wasn't working as hard as she had with the previous firm, she was more exhausted when she went home. It took her 3 months to get used to working slower because her brain, and to be able to work in longer, more extended chunks, because she had become so used to working fast like this all the time. Now, if we're happy working fast, that's fine. But if you're not so happy working that way, then think about, is there something that you can change, perhaps? And in her case, it took her 3 months before she was able to be comfortable in the new work that she was doing. So that's one thing. Another one that's really important, and the women in the room, us 34%, according to Rod. Was it Rod that said, oh no, it wasn't, it was Robyn this morning, wasn't it, 34% other ladies. Well, we think we're clever being able to multitask, right? Maybe not. What are the consequences of multitasking, folks? Just pull out. Walking into a lamppost? Thank you. What was that?
I go downstairs to get one thing, I pick up my emails, I've got
time wasted, absolutely. So there's this distraction factor that's going on. There's some interesting things that go on in our brain neurologically if we try to multitask, but the reality is we can only do one thing at a time. There is always going to be a very, very brief nanosecond, or whatever smaller than nano, but it's got to be a switch between one thing and the other, and so we'll end up being distracted. I've participated in research to look at it, and I've read a lot of research about this, and here are some of the things that happen to consistent multitaskers. And I'll give you the technology, so the medical stuff about it too. When the brain is faced with two tasks, the medial prefrontal cortex divides into two, so each half can focus on the task. The minute you bring a third thing in, it's too much for the brain to handle at once, and so consequently accuracy drops. In one study, frequent multitaskers had these things showed up. They became more black and white thinkers. They started to lose perspective. They were less effective at filtering out the irrelevant information. They chose extraneous information over the task-related information. They had a difficult time pulling information from short or long-term memory into working memory. They had a tough time switching from task to task. They struggled to stay organised, to set priorities and to manage their time, and they also had a constant low-level feeling of guilt. Anybody identify with any of this? Yeah, you guys are all smiling around the room, you're there. So it's pushing us into this world of reactivity. Now let me just pick up on the reactivity just for a second, and I'll just talk to you for a moment before I come into some solutions to that diagram that I passed out. Has everybody grabbed one? The one I call the toolbar of time. I want to just highlight for you how all of this fits in and where this reactivity issue flows in as well. What you have, oh, you haven't got one? Are there any more spare ones? Can somebody, Jacob, are you, oh, thank you. How many more hands? Jacob, would you mind, and Patrick, would you mind helping? Thank you. It'll come. Get your hands up, guys, so we can get that fixed. This toolbar of time, there's more up the back there. We can use those ones, it'll be over. You've got a bunch there, haven't you?
Yeah.
Yes. The toolbar of time is something I designed a few years ago, and I'll just give you the 90-second version of it. And if you want an expansion of that, that's the other little sheet. If you would like to receive more information and to get that free report, please just fill that in and pass that to me before you leave. This toolbar of time is what I see as my overview of the general topic of time management. Because people talk about time management as if it's just planning and prioritising, and it's not just that. So there's another hand behind you, Patrick, thank you, or two more, I see. Thank you. So there is this big picture, and could you just make sure those folks have also got the form to fill in to get the free report? We'll get this young lad working. So first of all, there's the big picture, that's our goals, what's important, with the tips card, which is also floating around. If you haven't all got a tips card, come and see me later. You'll see on there that I say on the first tip says, no is your most powerful time management tool. Now this applies to this whole information. Oh, you're bringing us water, you're sweet. Thank you. The no applies to the information overload thing as well, which I'll come back to in a second. So is knowing what are your goals, what's important to you, so that you can push back appropriately. The second one is the planning and prioritising, and you've got the four elements listed there. That's where we come into our how to do our planning and prioritising, and reactive will fit in as an opposite to developing a proactive focus. So how can we go from being reactive to developing more proactivity? There's more points on there, but I'm not going to talk to them now. The tips and techniques, really that's where this topic fits. That how do we cope with information overload? How do we cope with meetings? How do we cope with email? What are some of the simple strategies, the practical things that various speakers have talked about, keeping things practical and easy to apply? And Peter, you said something to the effect of, you didn't use quite these words, but I translated it to small hinges swing big doors. You didn't quite say that, but after something small that we change will have a massive impact somewhere else. And that's what this information overload, if we can just even change one or two things, will make a huge difference. So there's examples of the tips and techniques, and the sanity gaps is the fourth area, which obviously I'm not speaking about today. So that just gives you a little bit of a framework. So coming back to this whole multitasking thing and this being reactive on our work effectiveness, if we become reactive, we're not focusing on the longer term things, the things that we fit in that first column, the big picture problem, if you like, the tasks, the activities, the strategic approach that's going to make a difference to our work life and to our personal lives. The outcome of that is that we don't have time to reflect because we're filling in all the minutes that we've got and we're just jumping from thing to thing all the time. When I'm running corporate workshops, I talk more about both, all of these components, of course, but just in terms of reactivity, there are two questions that I would share with you that you might like to use in regards to, is this something that I should be spending my time on right now? One is this my responsibility? And the second one is, when is the best time to do it? And when is the best time to do it also will come back to solutions on how to manage this information overload. Especially email, it's such a culprit, but it's not the only thing. Because information overload, we can do it to ourselves as well. There's many ways in which it comes at us. In terms of reactivity, just one other quick example that I'll give you. I was speaking to a conference for SAP, the big organisation that probably drives a number of your companies or organisations. And this gentleman was sharing about a friend of his in another organisation who, as senior manager, now cannot read a book. It's not they can't read, but it cannot concentrate long enough to read a book. Is there anyone in the room that struggles with that these days? Yeah. And why is that? What's been your, what do you think drives that?
It's just taking the time to sit and relax and get into it, to speak out of other things.
Yes.
Being like it.
Very good. Anyone else?
You read one page and fall asleep.
And that may be that you're not taking enough time out for yourself, perhaps, to rest and recharge. Well, I'd love to have you guys for much longer. I could go into power naps and all sorts of things, but anyway, we don't have a power nap on me, all right? But in actual fact, there's many things that we can do to look after ourselves in that way.
Robyn, I think it's part of the opportunity cost as well. If you're reading one book, there's another one you're not reading, and of course you're getting bombarded constantly with all the different things that you should be reading.
Yes, so there's that, then we come to the guilt thing, don't we, Nigel?
Yeah, to read a really good long novel, it's impossible to stay focused on it because you think, oh, I better read that one.
And then we would come right back to the big picture, which is why I've given you this diagram, because that is knowing what's important to you. So if having a bit of peace of mind to be able to enjoy a good novel is one of your values, and I love to read, I just make that a priority. Sometimes I'll just do switch off. So again, there's many more things that we could talk about on that context, but I want to stay to the topic here. So hold that.
Somebody else get around this by reading 2 books at once?
Yes, I do, absolutely. Yeah. I will have a look. Don't growl at me here, people. If I go to, I'm a girl. Go to the loo, almost always take a book. It's amazing how you can get through a few pages when you're having a wee quiet sit. But I don't ever read a business book when I'm just about to go to bed, because what's that going to do to your brain? It's bad. Yeah, well, it might put you to sleep, or it might wire you up. In fact, it depends how exciting a business book is.
Does your brain get so wired though, like the ADD, so you said,
yes.
You said that we get so used to multitasking and responding that actually to sit and just read a book, it's hard to do because you're trained, we've trained our brains to become distracted. I'm wondering how much of that is we have to unlearn that.
You're absolutely on the nail. Thank you for that. And Jacob's just shown me that I've only got about 5 more minutes. So, Jeremy. But I'm taking the questions as well. So can you give me another 5?
You've already taken it.
But I thought we had to finish at 3. I'm watching that clock.
Yeah, well,
Shall we have an argument about it? No. Tell me what time do I actually write it up?
3.
well, 7 minutes.
I have to. All right. Okay. Right. Let me get to some solutions. So, but Terry, absolutely to your point that yes, we need to, if we want to master this, we need to retrain our bodies. And the only way that I know is by being very deliberate about it. So with that form for filling in to get the top time tips, zine, and the free report, please make sure that you do get that. If you haven't got a sheet, come and see me, because that has got more information about that topic. Let's get to some of the solutions. With email, first thing, sticking to my topic that I did with the New Zealand Herald, don't do email first thing in the day. Now, please don't throw things at me, all right? Unless it's critical. Now, there's one way, in fact, one of my regular clients, and I saw one of the CEO here this morning. I was working with one of the senior associates of a very large patent attorney firm. Peter, you're not here, are you?
Yeah.
Oh, you are? Hi. Well, then, if I tell you what Nigel started doing, that would, you may already know this. This gentleman, he now, in order, because there's, you can imagine any law firm pretty much has got things coming from overseas at different times. And so what Nigel now does, he's got his oldest son, he needs to get to school, and he's waiting for the kid to get him in the car. So he'll have a quick check of his PDA, his BlackBerry or whatever, or iPhone, just in case there's anything that absolutely needs to be done. Then he's got peace of mind that he can go to his desk and get to work straight away on the high value things. And my encouragement is to use your diary as a planning tool, not just an appointment taker. And to block into that diary chunks of time, this is another strategy, chunks of time, so that you can focus on high value activities. Because what happens if we go to our email first? Typically, you're answering them, yes, and it keeps on rolling, doesn't it? And it goes on, and we're doing this knee-jerk thing. And sometimes an hour can go by, or sometimes more. Now, some of you are very self-disciplined, but I don't trust my discipline. If I go there first, I know it's so easy to go, I'll just check that one, and I'll just get that one answered. It'll be quite good to get these empty, and so on and so forth. So, hello, are you coming to share with me? I don't need you. I certainly don't need any help. Thank you. It's fine. That's all about. Okay, maybe it was another room.
Yeah, could be, yeah.
Anyway,
The screen's gone black now.
Sorry.
The screen's gone blank.
So look, doing something high value first. Another thing is turn off the alert. This is such a simple thing. Who's got some form of a notification zapping across your screen? Okay, not all of you, well done those you haven't, but turn the damn thing off. You don't need to know that you've got mail. You can chunk your blocks of time and do it several times through the course of the day, but do it at your time, not everybody else's time. Because if we allow them to keep coming at us, who's in charge of our priorities? They are, not us. Another simple one is educating your correspondence that you do your email at a set time. And the easiest way to do that is to put it into a signature or part of your signature. I check my emails X number of times per day. If you have something urgent, please just call and give the phone number. That can be an easy way. Or you might set up an autoresponder. I'm reluctant to suggest that because it's another mail that's going out, but sometimes some people choose to do that. Let me just get a couple of quick ones. I'm going to share with you one of using rules is really important as well. On my website, gettingagrip.com, in the articles section, you'll find one of the articles in the office and email management side of things called How to Keep Your Inbox Empty. Now, I haven't updated it since many of us have gone to Outlook 10, so it gives the pathway for Outlook 7, but they're still pretty much the same. Is how to use rules and to use advanced rules. It's the sexiest thing. Sorry, it sounds a bit weird to say that, but it's so cool because you can just then be automatically filing your mail as it comes in for the people you're getting regular stuff from. Who does use rules? Yep, great, well done. Not very many of you. Really encourage you to do that. And I just want to finish off with one thing. Is Beiersdorf, one of my long-standing clients for many years. Many of you will know Nivea and Elastoplast as their products. But I was doing a one-year project between Australia and New Zealand marketing teams, and they told me about the reduced email week that they applied. And this is what they did. They sent out to every staff member just a little laminated card, which was on their everybody had it at their desks or on their computers, and then when people logged in on that week, it flashed up, obviously set up by the IT people, flashed up on their screen, and these were the questions on it. It said, before you send an email, ask yourself, do I need to send this? Can I deliver the message in person? Can I discuss this over the phone? Am I sending this email for the right reason? And if I must send it, have I copied in unnecessary people? And then they finish by saying, remember, email is not a tool for communication, only information. Interesting sort, isn't it? What they noticed was that the email, instead of people firing emails all throughout the week, sometimes multiple times a day, they significantly reduced the email traffic that week. Made a huge difference, and it increased the communication, the better quality communication. There are many other things I'd love to talk about. Open plan, I'd love to talk about. Actually, I've got articles. I did an article only, I think, about a month or 6 weeks ago about open plan. That's in the Herald as well. So if you wanted to find my articles there, just go to the New Zealand Herald. Obviously, it can be accessed around the world. And in the search box, just type my name and you'll get them all. So there is material there about open plan, and there's so many other things that we certainly could talk about. But just bear in mind that it's for us to take control of our environment as much as we can. If we can chunk, remember that word, if we can chunk blocks of time, that will give us quality time to work on high-value things instead of being at the mercy of all of these interruptions, self-induced as well as allowed, that come at us. Because at the end of the day, in this digital world, there is a trillions of times more information out there than we will ever in a lifetime be able to process. And we all know that. So we have to decide what information we want to receive and what we want to manage. Thank you very much for having me, folks.
Any final questions?
I'm around tonight. I'm not here for the next 2 days. Unfortunately, I've got work to do in Christchurch, but I'm around tonight if anyone has more questions.
It seemed to me that you focused exclusively on the negatives of multitasking. What about the positives?
The positives? You tell me some positives.
Yeah, well, I think the positives are that there are occasions when you absolutely must multitask because there are things that are important that are coming. Not the tyranny of the urgent, but the necessity of the important.
Sure. And keeping an awareness of those things, absolutely. We can do certain things simultaneously, but we will slow down. If we are doing multiple things at the same time, we're not giving the same concentrated focus, so therefore it will take us longer to do those tasks. And if that's what we need to do, so be it, we need to do it. And many of us will be running multiple projects, I am myself, but what I try to do is do a chunk of as much as possible uninterrupted time on that task, and then put it to the one side and then go on with the next one if I can. It's not always possible. And thank you for saying that too, because what it reminds me to say to you, this is 20 years of experience that I have been getting close to 21 years of experience in this field, so I absolutely have studied it minutely, and it's a smorgasbord. Take out of it the pieces that are relevant for yourselves, because there'll be things that I say you don't agree with, and that's perfectly fine. And there'll be other things you might try something, you go, actually she was right on that one. There'll be other things that you're doing better than me, and I'd love for you to come and tell me about those things too. So I'm here tonight for the evening event as well, so I look forward to seeing you.
Thank you very much.